Hello and welcome to Members on the Mic with the Troy Chamber of Commerce, where we connect with our Troy Chamber members as they give us a glimpse into their company and share some of the business lessons they've learned along the way. Hi everyone, I'm Tara Thompson-Cusack, President and CEO of the Troy Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined today by my favorite human of all time, who is also the best Vice President for the Troy Chamber of Commerce, Sheila Dunstead.
Hi everyone.
First, I'd like to take a moment and thank our presenting sponsor, Try-On Solutions. Stay tuned for our very first commercial break, where you can learn how you can rely on Try-On. Sheila, we have a very fun guest ahead of us today. Why don't you do some introductions?
I would love to. I'm excited to introduce a super cool cat. His name is Michael Bickers. He's a regional president of PNC Bank, Detroit and Southeast Michigan. He served as Midwest Territory Executive prior to his current role, responsible for 9 metro markets and PNC's retail branch. In this role, he was responsible for financial performance, risk management operations, and talent management client experience delivery throughout the Midwest. With more than 30 years of financial industry experience, Michael's held various senior roles since joining PNC, including commercial banking group manager, retail banking regional manager. There's a lot of R's right there. Southeast Michigan market executive and Chicago, Wisconsin market executive. Michael's an active board member of the Business Leaders of Michigan, Detroit Economic Club, Detroit Regional Chamber, Detroit Symphony Orchestra. Ooh, look at you. Downtown Detroit Partnership, and the Mary Grove Conservancy. Michael earned his bachelor's in finance from the Grizzlies at Oakland University in Rochester and holds an MBA in business administration. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, guys. Thank you.
So, Michael, first to get things started, obviously your background is vast and exciting, but banking. You started off in banking and grew into your career, your current position.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about this path, where you got started and how you got to where you are today?
I will tell you, just as a boy, I was just always sort of interested in money and how things work.
I mean, that's a good interest.
It's a good interest. And I just was always inclined to just study math. I just enjoyed it. And just somehow that sort of attached itself to being interested in business. So I was always, even in elementary school, business was always fascinating to me. And so that's how it started.
So from a business perspective, obviously you could have chosen any path. So what drew you specifically, though, to the banking industry? Because you could have done business and math and been an accountant. You could have done all these other things, but why?
You know, you might not sort of get this, and it's not a deep thing, but just everything I watched and read, and whether it was movies, whether it was articles, whether it was news reporting, it was always sort of banking, sort of Wall Street stuff that I just got excited about every single time. And so I started watching, business news when it first would come, like CNN. There was a time there was no CNN.
Oh, that's true.
Right? And so right off the bat, I was watching their business news, and it just never really stopped. And also in spending summer at Cranbrook in their Horizons Upward Bound program, I was assigned a business executive as well. And so all of that just sort of forced the issue almost.
I love that banking drew to your heartstrings.
Yeah,
That's not a normal statement, but I kind of love that. It's like my love of banking and movies. It's like, okay, all right, I'll take it.
There's a Seinfeld episode around that. That's hilarious.
Yes, I do remember that.
Why did you become a baker? So I don't know.
And here we are today.
Well, that kind of lends itself, the Cranbrook aspect lends itself into our next question on professional development advice.
Yeah.
What do you have? What kind of nuggets can you offer our listeners, our professional, personal, moving forward? How can they better themselves with some of the things that you've learned over the years?
And I think I've shared this with you guys. One part that gets overlooked a little bit is the taking of feedback. And I always tell people, some people, hear feedback. Some people hear and listen to feedback. And some people hear, listen, and they receive that feedback. And so you want to do really all three. And I was not very good at it in the beginning. When you don't tell somebody they're perfect or whatever, when they've always been told they're great, it's a hard thing to accept.
Yeah.
And so I've seen too many people get derailed by pushing back on feedback around performance or whatever competency or how they're sort of relating to partners and business performance. And so that's extremely important. And just owning your own development is very important. Waiting for others to do that for you is not going to work. People have to know you're interested in learning and growing. And then people sort of coalesce around supporting you that way. It has to be a two-way street. And oftentimes I see people waiting for that to happen. Like, what am I going to get enrolled in? What leadership courses? When are they going to promote me or what have you? And really, it's about people being clear that you're passionate about your own development.
How do you go about articulating that? I think
Mhm.
sometimes some of our younger professionals aren't so sure, and even some of the more seasoned, and not necessarily maybe timing, but the right way to say it without sounding like, "Hey, I'm coming in for your job."
Yeah, yeah. Personally, my team understands what we try to drive through our leadership team is our responsibility within all that work. But again, drive home to our interns and young associates, again, their responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, almost every Friday for me in the afternoon is dedicated toward like this work for most of our young people, whether they pop their heads in or we're scheduled to sit down and we talk about, their development and some of the things I've seen and what I see in them and what I'm being told like about them so that they don't stagnate. Again, early career development is just like early childhood education.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing. And when that doesn't go right and that path sort of flatlines, it's very difficult, to get it back. When I started as an analyst in the commercial and corporate bank, there were 9 of us that got hired in the intern program, and the credit manager, Tony Dolores, said, I'll never forget it, congratulations to all of you, but there'll only be 3 of you left in 6 months. And there exactly 3 of us left 6 months later, but imagine getting off to a shaky start
Yeah.
when you only got 6 months to make it. And so that's the part that's very important. I think also in that development path, you've heard this saying, by the way, I happen to disagree with a lot of famous sort of sayings like, be the best at what you do. Sometimes you're not going to be the best at it.
No.
And we just have to our job is to find the right fit for one's natural gifts as well as what we can coach them to, because I've seen people trying to fit square peg into a hole, whatever you call it. That is just not good for that person or for your company or organization. They're not happy. Have you ever been forced into something and you're happy at the same time? It's impossible.
Yeah.
Oh, shoes.
Shoes. Well, yeah, I get it. I go through a little bit of that. But
But you're right, though.
Yeah.
Faults and failures inspire innovation, too.
Yeah,
And it can
exactly.
help boost someone else up at the same
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. So we need to, it's an art and science about being balanced in how you give someone feedback or career advice, because you don't want to deflate anyone.
Yeah.
You have to be very, very careful. But part of what we have to do, though, is identify when we believe people can be successful, not be CEO tomorrow, but just in a healthy way, be successful in their current role. We've got to be able to get at that pretty quickly. It's very important.
Well, it's interesting you bring up feedback aspect. That is something I'm working on personally.
Mhm.
Because in all honesty, and Sheila, I'm going to use you as an example, Sheila is exceptional in everything. And I sometimes struggle giving positive feedback. And I know that sounds crazy because I hate to say it, I sometimes assume you're amazing.
Mhm.
And that's unfortunate, but it's one of those things of like, I sometimes forget to say, you did a great job, but it is equally important to give that positive feedback when
Yeah.
you do always do a great
Yeah.
job. So like,
Yeah.
but it's that piece of, I definitely struggle with that, and paying
do.
attention to that is really important.
Yeah. It's there's some people, by the way, they should never be asked for feedback on a person, because people think that means I need you to tell me everything negative or
Mhm.
not great about that person. That's happened to me. And unfortunately, when people are giving other people feedback about you, you're not in the room.
Yeah.
So that's the issue you have, is people need to understand exactly what feedback means. We're asking you to help us better develop that person. We're not asking you for all the things that are great and all the things that are wrong. We're asking you about competencies and how those things, the ability to manage change, teamwork, performance, all of those things. Where does that person need to focus on? And by the way, we talk about it, say, in January. It doesn't mean that person's going to nail them all by December.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So development is not a calendar year thing. It's a multi-year
It's a growth.
commitment piece of it. But people do need to know the truth about their development. And if you run from that, that's not going to end well. In the world we live in, the good old boy thing does exist, by the way.
Truth
So there
hurts.
are people that get to run stuff
Yeah.
that should never have been allowed.
Mm-hmm.
But no one gave,
Hey.
but no one gave it right there. But no one gave a feedback. Of course, that excludes you, Terry. But people sometimes are afraid to give people that, and a lot of it's because the person performs really well,
Mhm.
and they just sort of automatically get elevated, and that's a mistake as well, because you can do well, but the people underneath you, the reason they're doing well is because they just want you to leave them alone. So there's no reason for you to talk to them because they're doing well. And that is a bad dynamic. But I've been there as well.
Yeah. Well, Sheila, I'm never going to leave you alone. But guys, I think this is a great time to take a quick break
Sure.
and hear a word from our presenting sponsor, Tryon Solutions. We'll be right back.
I'm Joe Vicari, President and CEO of the Joe Vicari Restaurant Group, which encompasses 24 restaurants throughout the country. With the addition of Tryon, our general managers don't have to spend hours doing paperwork and putting people in our system. All that's done by Tryon now, so they can work on what they are there to do, take care of our customers. That's why we rely on Tryon.
You can always rely on Tryon.
Welcome back to Members on the Mic with the Troy Chamber of Commerce. So we are engulfed in this professional development, feedback, all of this great conversation. But Michael, can we talk a little bit about mentors and advocates?
Yes.
So people always kind of interchange that word, but they are not the same thing.
No.
And when should someone be looking for an advocate? When should someone be looking for a mentor? And what are the things to be looking for, I guess, in that aspect?
Again, I have over 3.5 decades, I've developed, in some cases, a little bit of a contrarian view of these things.
Okay.
So I've seen where they're going to look for, you get assigned. What happens with, if I can speak to this,
Please.
what I've seen happen with women and people of color in particular, and starting out in a career. And because of the uniqueness of us all, not everyone can understand how to manage to that particular uniqueness and that particular individual. So what happens is I've seen people run into trouble trying to help certain groups develop, and right away, well, let's get them a mentor, as if it's some sort of lifeline thing. Let's get them a mentor. I'm like, but I'm paying you to develop that person. The mentor thing is like down the road. You have to stick to the core competency around development before you go, because mentors, most think, are there to make a person feel good. So if you're going to have one, have two of them, somebody who does that and somebody who does make you feel so good because they're telling you the truth. So what happens is I've witnessed organizations throw mentors at people much too soon. It almost, for some, especially for women and people of color, in my experience, people take that to mean that person is some kind of special case, in need, not doing well already, and so we got them a mentor. And of course, there's the exact opposite. They're doing great. They're going to be great. We see it. Let's make certain we get a mentor around them so they know we're investing in them and so on
Goes back
and
to
so
that
forth.
growth mentality.
You need that because
Yeah.
sometimes, I work for my share of people have been very difficult. But I own that too, but it's been very difficult. And sometimes you do need that mentor to, hey, everything like you said early on the break, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. And let's just kind of talk through so on and so forth. But advocacy is a much different thing. People ask, pretty regular, hey, Mike, will you put in a good word for so-and-so? They're going for some job or promotion. I'm like, well, why would I do that? And what does put in a good word mean?
And you're putting your name to someone
You're putting
as
your
well.
name to so it's very rare
Mhm.
that I do that because I'm not informed. Well, I should say I don't do that all the time because I'm not informed. Remember, promotions or jobs with, greater responsibility, we need that person to be the right person, and we need them to be able to succeed. And the way you tell that is their track record of performance, their relationships with their partners, all of those things, their growth that you've witnessed in that person. And so advocates are not going to advocate for you if you don't put in that work of, again, relationship building, track records, your reputation, sort of like your personal brand. So I don't, I'm a mentor to many, but I don't advocate for everybody. And my people know that. They know. They know. So that's what I would say from my experience is the difference in creating advocates at that executive level. That's where the performance part and the track record part really comes into play, because you're being asked, take me in the prior role. There was like 10 states. They're not going to put someone in a job with no track record because somebody
there still has to be metrics in it.
Mike's a good guy. He should sort of get that job. By the way, that happened all too often years ago, but that's not how we play it at PNC for sure.
But you also have to set people up for success.
That's right.
So if you're advocating for someone, you have to believe in who you're advocating
Excellent
for.
point. That's exactly right. And so I think I've seen the two sort of get crossed up. I've seen people be able to still deliver that, but I've seen people just not work out because it was all about the relationships they had and not about the record they had created.
Oh, now we're going into a question about relationships.
Yeah.
So that's a
Good
nice
lead-in.
piggyback. Yeah. As you know, chambers are all about creating and fostering relationships. In business, we need to make sure that we make these relationships grow. We nurture them. How do you do that? How do you make time with your calendar, with your schedule, with meeting all these people to take them to nurture those relationships?
For me personally, you don't have a choice because that's our future talent. It is a huge part of the job. As my media officer would tell you to my left, Rob, I spent decades in the grind of the work, right? So my whole job is about the health and well-being of our company, which means the health and well-being of our people. So I have to do that. It's really not that difficult. It's like somebody saying, hey, can we meet tomorrow at 8:00? And you're like, well, that's only tomorrow. But then you look and there's nothing on your calendar for 8:00, so why not?
Yeah.
So it's not that difficult really to balance that. But the relationship part, as I shared with you guys, you have to value everybody's contribution. I don't care who you are. Everybody comes to work, for the most part, wanting to do well in whatever it is they do. Everybody participates. So everybody matters. And so when you don't create relationships with that entire ecosystem, you might be successful, I suppose, but you won't have the impact on people that we really need our leaders to have. And so that's why I think relationships with everyone, appropriately so, is just, it's just very important. People need to know I hold a role, so it's not about Michael. People need to know that the person holding this job values what they do and that they care. Not by giving them an ice cream cone kind of care.
Yes.
Star on the forehead.
But by being
the right person.
helpful,
Yeah.
mentor, advocate, whatever it is, those things are very important. We had a couple months ago a big job opportunity, a huge promotion opportunity. And it got down to 2 people. And it was like tied. So naturally people come to me. And I'm like, great, because you know them both. And so I said, you know what? They both had sort of equal performance and all of these things that they do and the volunteerism and all of this stuff. And I said, I need the phone numbers of their 4 primary partners. So I called them. And while it wasn't night and day, it was pretty cut and dry who the partners sort of enjoyed working for and who the partners are almost forced to work for in terms of just the responses. Like that person, Mike, I got to tell you, they're great, but they're not vested in my team's success. Or, that type of thing. So I always determine these things by the impact of the team. And so that's how it gets decided. So without that relationship building part, it's kind of hard as you go up the ladder to crack a few ceilings,
Yeah.
if you will. Yeah.
Well, it also identifies care.
Mhm.
When you care about what you do, you care about the team that surrounds
That's right.
you. So you want the one who's going to care the most.
That's right.
And it does reflect in all the people that surround them. So
Mhm.
that's actually a really kind of inspiring way of looking at things.
Well, it's all this stuff you just learn by you just learn this stuff over decades of just seeing it all, bumping your head, being hard-headed. I was everything. Somebody just happened to save me, I think, before it was too late, eons ago. But sometimes you need that too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we talk about relationships, we talk about all of that, but we are held accountable.
That's
We
correct.
all need to be held accountable to our performance. We need to be held accountable to the metrics to achieve our goals.
That's right.
How do you kind of work that balance of maintaining the relationship, but making sure that performance is in the forefront?
You know, any sort of, and I keep saying big job, but I think you guys get it. So
Yeah.
in these big jobs, as you get them, and as your responsibility expands, you figure out pretty quickly that before you sort of try to pull people into your vision thing and talk about all the great things we're going to do and the performance that you're after, and we're going to be number one at PNC, you have to really kind of connect with everyone one-on-one and be clear about, let me put it this way, whatever's important to that person needs to be important to you. They may never turn into some, golden child of PNC and, blindly follow me because of that.
But would you even want that?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you want to connect with them so that they understand where you're headed. And you need to understand, and they need to understand and figure out if they want to be a part of that. Again, what's important to them has become important to you.
Mhm.
And then you can start moving into the issue of vision and purpose and performance being a part of that. And so you do have to, you hear the term, which is interesting to me. People will talk about like micromanaging. So you have a manager, say 10 people on her team, and none of the 10 are performing. And you start managing them. And what do they say?
They're
She's micromanaging me. Well, where we come from, when you don't perform, you get managed.
Mhm.
But I think it's better if you manage from day one, right? So that people are clear about the expectations and they're clear about your role in that support. You have to get to a place where people feel good about the work they do because they see success in it. And that requires performance management in a good way. It's not I hear the term we've talked about today, hold people accountable. It has such a negative connotation.
But it
People that
doesn't
want
have
be,
to.
but
Yeah.
most people I know want to be the best anyway.
Mhm.
They expect to be sort of held accountable. But what they rather hear is, I'm going to help you drive towards success, which is the same thing as holding them accountable. So I tend to use different terms so that people don't get sort of like, you got to hold your team accountable as if you haven't been doing so until like today. And so that's what I would tell you about the performance piece. One thing you want to avoid, as I just shared with my leadership team a week or two ago, is people running around. And remember, these are probably 12 different lines of business, all kind of different kinds of businesses, but also connected. So retail bank, corporate bank, wealth bank, risk, this, that. And what'll happen come November is the big performance review and comp discussions, blah, 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 blah. And the last thing you want are people that are wondering about how those conversations are going to go
Yeah.
because you haven't been clear each and every month or week or whatever, or where people are. And so I see it every year. It's like,
No one should be surprised
one's
if
to be
they're not
surprised.
delivering what they should be.
Right. And that unfortunately can happen. And that's, again, a reason why you want year-round talent and performance management going on so that people are clear, so that people don't try to negotiate, quote unquote, performance ratings. Well, I get all that, but here's why it should be this.
But
You know
I'm
what I mean?
likable.
You know, everybody loves me. It's like, yeah, I get all that, so do I, but this is it. So I think that's why, and people, 20 to 30% of our people want to be elevated. That's kind of where it usually falls. And they need to understand what that means. I've got great people, but so do my counterparts in Texas and Florida and all those other states and New York and New Jersey. So my job is to make certain that when they go to get in that arena, so to speak, that they have a platform to win that competition. And if all you have is the fact that you performed, you're probably not going to win that. Yeah.
Mike, thank you.
Yeah.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
I know I'm so
I'm
entrenched.
engulfed.
I think one of my takeaways today is there's a difference between hearing and listening. And it's that listening part that really makes a difference and something, that I truly believe in myself. What else can you share with our listeners? One last nugget that they can walk away with when they go back to their team after listening to this.
It's simple. I say it a lot to myself and to others. If your desire is leadership, then you have to learn how to become or grow to become the kind of leader people want to work with and for. And then you'll attract all the talent. You'll have the best performing teams. You'll retain that talent. I'm a living witness. And so that's what you sort of strive to be. And then you can pretty much run alongside the best. Doesn't matter what they do, where they come from, all of that. I'm in the room with a lot of people in the quote unquote, a lot of the best schools, best companies, but everything comes down to the leader. Doesn't matter. They can't teach you leadership at Harvard. I guess there's a class called leadership, but I've seen some situations and where I grew up, you learn how to lead pretty quickly. I won't get into all of that, but you learn how to.
Knowledge is also sometimes the experience you have, the mistakes
That's
you
right.
make.
The
and
experiences.
that's the way you're
and-
going to grow and learn how to lead.
Right. And a lot of times you hurt people and didn't know it. That's why it's good to have friends that tell you where you screwed up.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're on the right track and nobody tells you that because they're afraid to say something. In some cases because they can't stand you, in some cases because they like you too much. They won't tell you that you're on the wrong track. So you see to your point there, you see all these different things and you put them to use today to hopefully create an environment where people want to be a part of it, but they need to be clear about how they get to remain a part of it too. Yeah. So, but thank you guys so much.
No,
Thank
thank
you.
you. I think both of us just sat here in happiness. Like this is just,
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like I just had a warm conversation that's still going to help us grow.
I
Like,
hope it helps us all grow.
it was-
Rob hears it all the time,
I mean,
by the way, so
he's probably used to it. The man not on screen. But Michael, thank you so much
You're
for
so
joining
welcome.
us.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Guys,
Thank you.
That's all we have here today on Members on the Mic with the Troy Chamber of Commerce. Special thanks to Michael Bickers with PNC Bank. We really appreciate you joining us today. Also, special shout out to our presenting sponsor, Tryon Solutions. To learn more about the Troy Chamber or for upcoming events, go to troychamber.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye now.
Bye-bye.